out of all the people I've met, if I were to segregate men and women for a moment, really, if there is only one thing I could tell the women of today to be able to inculcate or adopt or imbibe in their lives, it's actually very simple at the core of it. See, today you are just as educated, even more educated than men or boys. So there is nothing that you lack. And it's been proven beyond any reasonable doubt across many industries and various fields that women are way better than men in a myriad different things. And the things they're not as they're not better, they still think they're better. So so the nutshell is you are better at everything. But I have seen more lost and confused women compared to men. Most women I meet are somehow as if there's an underlying streak of sadness, of that non-fulfillment. Something is missing. There is a void of some kind. Now, there is also no denial that you are more creative than men, and you're blessed with this great emotional brain and heart, which becomes the basis of your modus operandi, if I may put it that way. But why does it happen then that somehow you start to think less of you? So if there is only one thing, as I was saying, which if I could take away, is your quest to see your fulfillment in another person. What happens more often than not, and this is purely based on observation, not experience, because I'm not a woman for that matter. When I meet so many people, such tremendously capable women, once they fall in love, they throw away everything. Their career, their ambitions, their goals, their capabilities, they are just so lost, then they make that man the center of their life. And that's it. Everything is then done for that person, to please that person, what appeals to that person, what makes them happy, what does that person want, and so on and so forth. Gradually what happens is it starts to clip your wings. And somehow you think my happiness now is entirely dependent on how this person's supposed to feel or make me feel. But if you recall a moment when you were not 12 or 13, before you hit your teen years, when you were in school, when you're growing up, you had your own goals, you had your own dreams, you had your own way of life. You wanted to be something, you wanted to be somebody. Your goal at that point in time was not to fall in love with somebody and constantly have that person dictate how you're supposed to feel about yourself. And I don't really know where that shift comes. Or when that shift comes, why does a woman start neglecting herself just because it makes the partner or the husband or somebody else happy? And what is even more tragic, this journey continues throughout life. They'll first do it of course, they want to make their parents proud. That's every child's dream. And women tend to be more sincere emotionally. So they would want to make their mother or their father proud. So first, it's okay, I will do this thing because my parents want it. And then they fall in love. or they will try really hard to fall in love with somebody, to appeal to somebody. And when that happens, everything is for that person. And usually the first thing that gets chopped is your career. What you could do for yourself and the world. That's the first thing that gets axed. And then it doesn't stop there. If you're married and you have a child or children, then everything is for them. It still does not stop. So if there is one thing I could really tell you, it's that it does not arise from a corner of self-love. No matter how you justify it, it comes from a corner of self-neglect, where somehow the world has made you feel that for you to be complete, for you to be adequate, somebody else has to give you a pat on the back and saying, you're doing a good job. And you'll say, yes, I'm now complete. Now imagine for a moment, if the love that you seek outside from somebody else, if you could realize that you are complete already, that your parents have given you the education required to go stand on your own 2 feet and make your own decisions and look after yourself. Imagine if you could for a moment be in a life where you're happy and content without the need to constantly have somebody or the person you want in your life to support that notion for you that you are great. Can you imagine how powerful you will become? That, in my mind, would be true liberation. See, you are born with this strength of extreme devotion, of a very creative mind, of being very visual, of having this great foresight, of sharper intuitive faculties, all of which are ignored or they go rustic because you have made somebody else your whole soul. And you're thinking, बस सब कुछ मुझे इस व्यक्ति के लिए करना है. You know, sometimes women think if I wasn't this way or was that way, maybe my husband wouldn't cheat. Or maybe if I was very liberal, my husband wouldn't cheat. Or maybe if I was not a certain way or I was a certain way, he wouldn't only love me and not anybody else. The thing is, it's completely independent. It's got nothing to do with what you are or aren't doing. They will just look for another excuse. Sorry for all the guys who are here, but this truth had to be told. So they'll just look for something else. And what happens as a result? You kept neglecting yourself, thinking I have to be a certain way for this person to love me fully as you define what's fully. But he was in his own tangent. And that, I don't think, is the way to leading a full life. That, I don't think, is the way to leading a good life, a meaningful life. If that's the only thing, if there's only one thing I could change, if, for example, we had the chance to go back millions of years and say, we have a drawing board, let's create men and women, or man and woman, and let's do it from scratch. First of all, I'll crumple the drawing paper and throw it. Why bother? Everything is going fine. We shouldn't change something just because it's working. But if, let's say, there was that imaginary moment for a moment, then if there's only one thing I could infuse in the womankind, it would be self-love, because it will give birth to self-belief and knowing that you don't need those people. There are so many women who are looking after their husbands So many of them absolutely good for nothing. And they are even in a toxic relationship, in an abusive relationship. They are constantly being in a constant trauma even. And yet, they continue to stick with that person. There is no sense, there is no rhyme or reason behind it. There is absolutely no logic. And yet, you choose to hurt yourself. You choose to allow yourself to be hurt on such a regular basis. It's completely unnecessary. And somewhere it stems from not loving yourself fully. It comes from not really understanding how much power you have. I think, I don't recall the name of that author or a speaker, Brené Brown or Joanne Marianson, I don't recall either of the two perhaps, or somebody else, who said, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And I'm paraphrasing this. So it was something along that line. That is really what the core fear is, because somewhere, some part of your subconsciousness really believes in who you truly are. And your conscious mind is in conflict because the people around you have constantly been giving you that feedback. It's a never-ending game of power and manipulation that is going on in the world, where both people are trying to manipulate each other into extracting a certain behavior, but mostly women are at the losing end. Because a man still goes on to lead his life the way he deems fit, still goes on to have a blast, whereas the woman is constantly in her world, when will the man come back? Now, I don't know where in evolution it started like this, because it was never meant to be like that. There was a time when women, when the matriarchs were there, and they would make the decisions, where women would select their own partners and they would kick a partner out when the partner was no good, and they would decide who's gonna run the kingdom and the rest of it. Those were also the days where Draupadi could say, I'm going to marry these 5 people. One doesn't have all the attributes I seek, even though, Kunti might have said, well, distribute amongst yourselves. So those were the times when Satyavati could call and say, this person is going to sire the heirs to this kingdom. But somewhere, some shift happened, which kind of led to a chain of oppression and oppressive behavior. And when I say discover your own truth, that's pretty much all I mean. That what is it that is the anchor of your life? However much you want it deeply, if it's another person, then you are in for a choppy ride. It doesn't matter how divine that person is. Because that person will keep reminding you of your shortcomings, and that almost becomes a narcissistic behavior where you start to believe in everything the world is telling you about you. Most of which is nothing but misinformed opinion, half-baked opinion of others.